Hi, I am Deborah Hatfield and I am making this YouTube video, one to show you a drawing in my rendition and how I think Joseph Smith may have looked. And I used about 3 different references. I used a daguerreotype and a photograph that people have claimed to be Joseph Smith. And I also used a color. Lucky Blue Smith. I've just been hearing a lot about him because someone I know is making movies and putting him in it and doing his own PR. So I keep seeing this steady stream as I've been doing these drawings, and I'm like, he looks a lot like Frederick here. And so you can definitely see he has the blue eyes and the sandy blonde hair. So I used him for a color reference for this drawing. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull this up, push play, and then I'm going to explain. This is part 1, and then there's part 2 where I mainly focused on this photo for reference right here. This was found in St. Louis, Missouri. A group in England, they use the handle Spiritist on YouTube, and I'll put a link to their video. They compare this daguerreotype to the paintings done of Joseph Smith and the death mask, and I was really convinced, and so I'll just let you watch that video to explain that. And so I used that as a reference for my drawing here. I free-handed this initially on paper, and then I scanned it and uploaded it to my iPad on an app, and so this is my first attempt with this, but I had a lot of fun. And so as I'm drawing this, I'm really getting to know whoever this person is that had a daguerreotype done of him. This is definitely someone who has a very similar and prominent hairstyle that we've seen in Joseph Smith's paintings that we've seen, that his sons and, well, his nephew that we know went to Hiram's son. I guess there are written reports that he verified various paintings that they'll show you in the Spiritist video as being of Joseph Smith. And so, like, that's his hairstyle. And another thing I've noticed, he's definitely got quite a bit of a tan. He's definitely looks like someone who's been out in the sun a lot. We know he did a lot of hard labor. He grew up on a farm and was very strong. And so you can see from this man's stature, he's pretty strong stature. He looks strong to me. He looks like a fun, happy-go-lucky type of person. But he looks very humble. I definitely look at this and think that this is a boy, someone who's very humble and very willing to listen to God, do whatever he tells him to do, which is why we think God chose him to be the prophet of the restoration. And so there was that photo. And so this is part 1. This is not my completed version, because then after I found this photo, I found another photo on Pinterest that looked very similar but older than this guy, and I'll explain that story in just a second here. These look very similar, except this man looks a lot older, and the ears really stuck out to me. The eyes looked similar, the chin, the mouth, the nose, the hair, but it looked kind of opposite. And so as I researched, daguerreotypes actually do kind of come out flipped. And as you draw and really look at a face, you start to notice all these details, like one eyelid is hooded. He has one eyelid that's hooded. And so it is on the opposite side of the face, and the shape of the eyebrows, it kind of has that space right there. He has the same thing going on. But it's talking about the opposites here. This side of the face, when you really look at it, it kind of comes up right there. You follow this line, and then it kind of slants down on the left side, and it does the same thing with this man. And so this photo, again, it kind of comes up on one side, slants down a little bit on the other, and it's the opposite eye. That they do have one eye that's a little bit more hooded. And even the hairstyle is exact but opposite. So he parts his hair on the right, he parts his hair on the left. And so daguerreotypes do tend to come out opposite unless they want to spend more money, which I don't think he had a ton of money ever. And just even the hairstyle looks very similar. And so this photo was also found out in the East. And so the website that I will link here, this is Juvenile Instructor website. And so basically they are quoting this older guy that they make fun of, and it just makes me sad because I feel for this guy. He says some crazy things as they're quoting him, and they just say, "Oh, by your grammar, we shall know you." But this guy says that he spent 2 years comparing this photo to Joseph Smith's sons. And so if you watch the Spiritus video, they do the same thing with this photo. And differences I definitely see are the nose. This nose, I think, is the same man, but his nose just looks like it's been shoved, like looks misplaced to me. As far as the splotchiness on this face, I really think his dark spots, but they aren't uniform like someone who has a suntan. You know that Joseph Smith was tarred and feathered and burned. His face was burned by a mob. And how do you get tar off? You rip it off. I'm sure a lot of his skin was ripped off. So this is him. I could really see that and theorize that this is not long after that. And so that's why it's more splotchy, just where he has had burns just randomly all over his face. But back to this story. So I will push the link there, and if you want to check it out and just read what this older man wrote as he's trying to sell this photo, he's putting a lot of theories as you read the quote, but I would recommend just kind of scrolling down as he explains, so what he found was this photo album with the Smith IDs photos in it. And on the backs, it was IDing. So I guess he just keeps talking about IDing, like it says Smith written on it. And it also says Vermont, talks about places like Vermont, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois, which are all places that Joseph Smith did live. And he spent 2 years comparing this photo to his sons and trying to see if the church would prove that this was him. And I've never seen it come out as him other than his website, and they just make fun of him, which made me really pretty sad. But I definitely see similarities between the Spiritist group. And so what I do find, again, as I explained, that this is a daguerreotype, so assuming that this is a flip perspective, they look even more similar, and I flipped it around to compare it, and then they really look similar. And the next thing I did was compare it to the death mask. As I talked about some of those prominent features there, I mean, of course, you don't have the ears, so you can't analyze the ears here. But kind of going down the face, I see a lot of similarities. It does look like from the death mask, possibly a receding hairline. It looks like that to me. In the Doctrine and Covenants, he receives some comforting revelation, possibly to him, talking about when you're resurrected, not a hair of your head shall be lost. And maybe he was losing some of his hair, and maybe that was another, not so fun thing and hard thing on top of everything else. But I heard and read a lot of things about people analyzing the death mask here, and one woman pointed out this scar right here. So you see this line. And so when you look here, I see a similar line. And I see it looks like his nose has been broken. And so if you follow this path of the nose, this kind of is more concave and kind of comes out on that side. You got the same shape going on right here. And then as I was talking about before, one eye is hooded, one's not. So assuming that this is him and this is the correct perspective, it would be the left eye would be more hooded and his right eye would be less hooded and more sunken in. To me, it looks like that eye socket was blown out. And it does kind of look like the bone is just a little bit damaged there, a little bit different. So when I look at this eyelid compared to this one, I see more skin coming down, as if this eye opened, it would be more hooded, because this comes down farther and it looks more thick and more heavy, whereas this does look more sunken in. And you follow the curve around here, kind of prominent shape right there, you do see that. And then if we follow the shape of the nose, that looks extremely similar. that is a match. Okay, and both look very gaunt, very high cheekbones, very thin face. You see this line coming down here. You also see this line coming down there. And then the other prominent feature I saw in those two photos. I'm going to zoom in here. And again, you see how the left, his right side of his mouth, our left, kind of comes up right here. Kind of comes around, follow that line, and then it just sort of goes down and slants. On that side of the face, we would see the same thing. This man's is exactly the same side, comes up a little more in a smile, comes around this side, goes down. That is a match. And then the chin. You do see that shape right there. You definitely see that shape there. And you don't know what other damage happened. I mean, the man fell 3 stories. You know, it's amazing that they got to it and were able to get a death mask. They just didn't get any photos. And I did hear a lot of reports of, I read something that his son wrote, because his son and Emma weren't the best of friends with Brigham Young at times. He did travel out to Salt Lake City. This is Joseph Smith III. He became the leader of our LDS church, and came out to visit. And he describes this conversation with Brigham Young. It sounds very emotional and very heated. Sounds like he got into quite a debate with his cousin, and I think his son struggled. I think their stepdad wasn't the best guy, and they just had a hard life. But one thing he does talk about is that Brigham Young is asking and is upset that he doesn't have photos of Joseph Smith. So there's a reference to having seen and known that there are photographs of him. And so, in my opinion, I really think that these two are, but I recommend you just check it out yourself and see what you think.